It's the last day of the year 2024, and in today's video, I'll be going over the most powerful chart for Bitcoin, which likely correlates to pretty much all of cryptocurrency land, and we'll be going over several statistics pertaining to the beginning of this upcoming year 2025 and what that likely looks like in terms of price action. So without further ado, here is the most powerful chart in all of Bitcoin land, and it is the yearly chart. Why is that? It is just a very clear and obvious trend here, and I think very, very soothing for people to kind of look at for the long term. Bitcoin essentially closing this year out on the highs overall is a good thing. Yes, I do think that this market is hot. Yes, I do think that this market is probably going to put in a top, I guess, sooner than what many people are considering. But I don't think that the top is in just yet, and very likely we do see new highs into 2025. Now, I want to get into what to look for in the beginning of January. So I've gone through each and every January in Bitcoin's history here, and I've recorded several statistics for this. Several of them I've already presented, but we'll go over them a little bit later. But I want to present a new one right off the bat here, which is measuring the Bitcoin. I have it December right here, but it's actually January. I just didn't update the name. That's just a copy and paste job. Anyways, yes, my OCD is massively firing off right there. But what I've done is I've measured the open of the month to the low of the month, the open of the month to the low of the month, and recorded the percentage drawdown that we've seen in all Januaries in Bitcoin's history, and found that on average, there's about a 7% delta between the open and the low. Now, that's including all data. When I bifurcate that data between macro uptrends or just weekly uptrends, and weekly downtrends, that number goes down a little bit, actually, to about 5.82. Now, I do want to take a little bit of liberties here to assume that Bitcoin closes somewhere around where it currently is. I mean, whether it's 93, 94, 95, it's all the same shit in my opinion. And if we do see a closure somewhere around here, well, what is 5.5% to the downside put you at? 88,500 bucks. Where does 7% put you down at? Around 87-ish. Both areas are areas of interest that we've been having on this channel for this current corrective period, which I do think would catch a lot of people off guards. On top of that, if we go back on over here, the monthly time frame will very likely see that red moving average come up around that region as well. Let's call it 86 to 88,000 bucks, somewhere in a range right there. We've seen it, rise up quite significantly from November to December, and I expect that it will rise up again, somewhere around this region to open up January. And Bitcoin very, 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 very likely to reconnect with it. As we've gone over many times in this channel's history, we can see that a very simplistic piece of analysis is this. The 5 exponential moving average, this red moving average right here on the monthly time frame, Bitcoin likes to reconnect with that during its trending movements, meaning that when you're in an uptrend like you see over here, it likes to reconnect with it before having major continuation to the upside. Yes, every once in a while, there is not a reconnection on a month or in some cases a bi-monthly basis, but during those times, price usually trades sideways, not really doing anything of significant interest in the grand scheme of things, and it's not until you get that actual reconnection where continuation is really possible. So, good example would be, several examples right here, and and several examples as you can see, just by using your own fucking eyes. Anyways, so yes. Again, the percentage drawdown right here, plus the 5 exponential on the monthly. Again, there's many other things that we could look at as well. Check out yesterday's video if you want a more in-depth analysis of that. I still do look at as corrective targets for this current, this current period, I guess. And if Bitcoin is going to be bullish, we actually do expect Bitcoin to come down early on in the beginning of January, and set in the low somewhere around the first week, assuming that it is going to be, an overall bullish month, let's say. But moving on from there and getting into some of the prior statistics that I want to remind myself and perhaps people of the community as well is, when is Bitcoin likely to see the lows in January? So for this, I've gone through and recorded all of the days, or not the days, but the dates. Well, I also recorded the days as well, but didn't really find anything super interesting there. But I recorded the dates, and we can see when we include all of the data, not bifurcating it between, a weekly uptrend or a weekly downtrend, well, the average low of January came in a little bit before the end of the second week of January at around day number 12 and a half. Now, when we do bifurcate that data, which I find makes this a lot more valuable, when it was a macro uptrend or a weekly uptrend, the average date of January that had the low was around the end of the first week of January. So we'd very likely see Bitcoin pull back first week of January, set in a low somewhere around the end of the first week. And then if it is going to be bullish, work its way upwards and onwards from there. Of course, during macro downtrends, we see that low coming in way later within the month at around day number 22. So also of interest here as well. I also I wasn't actually planning on showing this, but I do want to just very quickly show this as well, because Bitcoin January highs are significantly different than any other month that we've seen over the past 4 to 5 months since we started recording this data. During macro uptrends, the date of the high of January, it's pretty early within the month actually, compared to other months. I mean, other months were, between the third and fourth week. This one over here is coming in around day number 15, just after the beginning of the second week. And during macro downtrends, you see that high within the first week. So if we do see Bitcoin open up January with a rally, I'd actually look at that as probably a bad thing. Like if it rallies the first week of January and then and puts in a high on the first week, that would actually imply not great things to me, at least for the short and medium term here. What you more likely want to see if you want Bitcoin to go up is Bitcoin actually pull back to begin January and then rally from there. Now, of course, we should also go over just January general statistics here. Of course, the percent probability for January to close positively versus negatively is about just over 57%. And the average win return for those positive closing months was 23%, the median win closer to 16%, and the average loss and median loss close to each other at around 16%. So, putting that into numbers here, like tangible numbers on the chart, again, assuming that Bitcoin closes out the month of December somewhere around here, $94,000. It's a crazy fucking number. 23% to the upside puts you to around 116,000 region, I should say. To the downside, if we do see a 60% move to the downside, 16% move to the downside, that's where a lot of the herp and derp pattern enjoyers of the world are going to get their target met at around 79,200. So, possible, yes. I still think that's less likely. I think it's more likely to move its way into the upper 80s, then bounce, fake out, and run to the upside, maybe late January, early February, something like that. But I do expect that most of January is going to be continuing with this sideways correction. Don't think that we're seeing any major trending moves emerge anytime soon, within the next 2 to 3 weeks, to be honest. And if they are, it would be to the downside, I guess. But again, I don't think that Bitcoin's like reversing here for the cycle or nothing like that. Anyways, okay. Now let's get to some of the higher term time frame momentum pivots, because there is a lot of things to be very much aware of right here. So here we go. Let me bring up Bitcoin on the index, and we can see that the month of December will actually see monthly stochastic momentum officially turn to the downside if Bitcoin closes below $94,000. Now, Bitcoin just rallied off of like $92,000 at the beginning of this morning to 94.5 here. So maybe close above, maybe close below. I guess we'll see. But $94,000 is the pivot. Is that a significant one for me? Not really, actually. The one that's very significant for me when we're talking about major cycle highs is the bi-monthly. Why is that? Because anytime that we've seen the bi-monthly stochastic oscillator turn to the downside, these have all marked prior, macro tops. I'll just mark them off right here. Boom, boom, and one more. There we go. And you can see these all perfectly correlate with prior cycle highs. Now, this one, I guess, not super, super perfect, but basically around the high nonetheless. It wouldn't have been a bad do to sell somewhere around there, in hindsight, if you're looking at the very, very long term. Now, in this case, we do see that the bi-monthly stochastic oscillator is working its way into the critical zone. I actually do look at that as a good thing long term. Why is that? Because you only get those sort of reads during very strong momentous moves, which we're in, but probably not going to stay super long within that region. So again, I do think that this market cycle does have an expiration date on it that is not so far away. I wouldn't be surprised to see it very much before the first half of this coming year is over, maybe even around the end of Q1. But I've released a video on that before and my reasoning behind it. And of course, I can be wrong on that as well. In fact, if Bitcoin spends, the next 2-3 months correcting in this region, I will be wrong on that because that actually would open up the path towards a much more prolonged timing of this. But, looking at major oscillators, which I won't go over in this video. Again, you can check out that prior video. I have a hard time seeing that. Anyways, moving on from there. Let's go over all of the higher term timeframes here. In fact, actually, let me go back to this chart right here. I want to bring up some of my indicators. Yes, so I've seen a lot about this as well, or I've heard a lot about it. Very loud people on Twitter and YouTube, and especially in the comments, calling this monthly look right here on the RSI bearish divergence. This is a good way to see if someone's actually fucking redacted, to be honest. Because one, it shows that you have not gone through all of the other higher term timeframes and compared. So whenever you have something like this, where yes, the monthly RSI is on a lower high alongside what could be very much, a local high right here, we should go ahead and check some of our other related timeframes to kind of judge if this is likely to play out at all. One, we should go to the 2-month timeframe, which by the way is already making new highs on the bi-monthly RSI. And yes, at some point you will have major divergence between these 2 points. But, even if we were to draw a regression from these 2 points, that still implied that this next, okay, that is not a well done one. Let me do this properly. There we go. That would still imply that, we at least have 1, maybe 2 more of these periods to close here before it actually does meet that region. And at that point, probably does put in, a major high. Again, that is actually how the bottom happened over here. 3 drives of hidden bullish divergence, more or less connected to each other. So, somewhere within this region right here, very, very likely we're looking at a major high, but we're not there just yet. On top of that, let's go to the 3-month time frame, which I think is also rather revealing. Bitcoin closing essentially around the highs. I mean, this is not it's not a fucking bearish read right here. Same thing on the quarterly RSI as well. You're going to have divergence at some point, but I don't think it's there just yet. You need to confirm a local high, and this is not a local high in any way, shape, or form for this time frame. On top of that, we can go to the 6-month time frame. So we're getting very high here, getting super high, and again, same thing. This is just continuing upwards and onwards. What I would say is maybe a little bit concerning is that, or concerning is the wrong word, but, going back to the conversation of reconnecting with that red moving average on just about each and every period, this right now is coming in all the way at $60,000. Now, obviously that's going to move up a lot, once we get this new 6-month open, but, that can only move up so much. It is a mathematical equation. And we've seen a similar move over here from the prior 6 months to the current 6 months, which did rise up about $20,000. So, that would move up from about 60,000 to, maybe again, mid to upper 80s. If it follows that exact path, but it should be a little bit more. So yeah, upper 80s I would estimate, just because this last 6 months has been outweighed the prior 6 months by a little bit, not by a whole hell of a lot, but by a little bit. So yeah. Anyways, that's kind of where I'm at for the beginning of January. If you see a pullback to open up January, I look at that as a good thing. Yes, that does imply that price would come down again to our corrective targets that we've been having for a while now, into the mid to upper 80s, wherever it ends up being, that would be fine. If you see that happen within the first week of January and then a bounce, probably a good sign, for very likely the low being in. Not necessarily saying that Bitcoin's just going to rally to the fucking moon and beyond from there, obviously, but probably does put in, a nice rally nonetheless. And if we see Bitcoin rally, more importantly, at the beginning of January, probably a bad sign actually, because the highs typically get put in before the first week is even over, when Bitcoin puts in, when Bitcoin's gonna have like a majorly bearish January. So take that as you will. But I do like how many things line up with that, mid to upper $80,000 territory region. Again, correction, very unlikely to happen. I mean, obviously it's not happening today. Bitcoin's bouncing today. And again, Bitcoin can bounce. It could bounce all the way up to $97,000. It doesn't change anything. Even $97,000 doesn't really change a lot. It just would imply that something else is going on, and maybe those $80,000 corrective targets don't get hit. It's not really until Bitcoin's back above this last swing high here from Thursday, the 26th of December, where I'd even consider that this thing is actually just going to fucking bullzook its way to the upside from here. On top of that, we should go over the monthly HPDR. Thus far, it has been a rejection. I mean, thus far, it's like things are going to really change around today. It has certainly been a rejection of the median right here. I'm very keen to see where this opens up tomorrow. If by some act of God, this comes down, the median comes down to the point where Bitcoin is actually opening above it, and again, another obvious signal that Bitcoin will end up moving its way upwards and to the right from here. If Bitcoin remains below it, then essentially 108 highs like the major pivot, and you should expect a big fucking explosion above there if Bitcoin can actually trade above there. I mean, at that point, wherever the top side of the 38.2 level, even the 50% level is, relevant here, and respectively, that is 170 to 215 or 210. I don't think things get that high, but I mean, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary. Anyways, we're deep into this video. It's taken a lot longer than actually I considered, or planned for. But I should say, hey, if you find this content valuable, please consider liking and subscribing. And I'll leave one last thing here for the very, very end. The new meme in this market is not just moons, but a black moon. A black moon, which I don't really know what it is, honestly. It's some sort of witch-related shit. But it's the new meme in the market, it seems like. And it is it is thought of to be bearish. So what I did is I went ahead and plotted all prior black moons that we've seen in Bitcoin's history, and found that they actually were interesting results. You can see that these areas match up with major pivots on price action. That much is certainly obvious. But the direction going on from there, you kind of have to be a little more neutral on. We see a few instances of price going up, and we see many instances of price going down. To be honest, I guess the downside would kind of outweigh the upside, but I'd still take kind of a neutral stance on that. But if that were to play, I mean, that would be, what I hope for the Bitcoin Bullish sake is that you get something like this, just kind of works its way sideways and up, or, a short-term corrective period and then up. It's kind of where I'm at. But no promises there, obviously. Anyways, I saved the fun stuff for last. As always, I want to wish you the best. And just as we are on the last day of 2024 here, I just want to say thanks for being a part of this channel for the past year. If you've been here for more than that, then fuck yeah, that's awesome. I know many people here have been, OGs since 2020, since 2019, since 2018. It's absolutely fucking insane, man. This wraps up, I guess, 7 years of close to 7 years now of, I guess, doing YouTube videos. Kind of crazy to think about, man. But yeah, wishing everyone the best. Have a safe and fuck safety. Go have fun. Go have fun for your New Year's Eve. Blow off your fucking hand. Poke out your eyes with fireworks. It's good. It's good. It'll give you some stories in the future. I'm kidding, okay? Don't do that unless if you, I don't know, want to, I guess. So we'll end on that note. As always, I want to wish everyone the best. Take care. Much love, and see you hopefully next year.